I'm Adam Jennings, and this is Awaiting Approval, a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. Today I'm joined by Jason Giles, VP Product Design at UserTesting, former design leader at Ticketmaster, AT&T, and Microsoft, for a relaxed two-way conversation about his journey, the lessons he's learned, and what it takes to lead with creativity and esteem. Jason, hi, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adam. It's great to be here.
Awesome. I'd love to start us off nice and light and also allow people to kind of get to know you a little bit better. So if we were meeting in person to record this today, where would you take me and what drink would you order?
Well, we would be in Edinburgh, Scotland. It's a beautiful day out right now, so would we out walking. Surprisingly, anywhere you go in Edinburgh, you have a view of the castle. So it's gorgeous out. You've got this amazing backdrop. We would be getting a coffee. In Edinburgh here, they like a bitter type of espresso, so I'd be taking you to a more Italian place where you get that rich roast. And I think we would just wander around and take in the sights. It's so rare that it's beautiful weather in Edinburgh, so we would definitely be taking advantage of that.
I love that. And being an Edinburghian myself, I know exactly what you mean about the weather. So I will metaphorically raise a bitter coffee from an Italian hotspot as we cheer you on into this conversation.
I love it.
When was the last time you used pen and paper?
10 minutes ago. I still use a pen and paper. It's interesting though, like I used to be a pencil and paper guy. I love wooden pencils. I collect them, but I've found that I've just gotten lazy. That's all they have around the office is now I've gone back to a pen. But I still love the tactility. It's also like I've been coming back to the office now for a couple of years, and I don't live very far, so it's really easy for me. But whether it's the paper or the whiteboards, like I realize I'm such a visual thinker, and even I flip through my notepads, or I never go back to them. I never actually am like referencing, very rarely, but it's more of a way of driving it into my memory. It's how I think. Whenever I'm in a meeting and I don't have anything to write on, I actually feel like I get anxious. So It's nice being in the office. There's always a whiteboard.
I get that completely. It's really funny because I often say to people, when you've got a whole kind of plate of spaghetti going around in your head and you're trying to figure out something complex or you're overwhelmed or what have you, like write it down physically to get it out of your head. But I love the reverse of that as well, to really make something stick. Writing it out physically, there's something about that physical action that is helping to kind of lodge it in your brain. And I know what you mean about not going back to the notes. There's something about writing that out as opposed to typing it out, which isn't quite the same somehow, for me at least.
Yeah, I find I do it a lot when I'm listening. So whether it's listening to customer feedback or even just like a conversation, not everyone is a great communicator. And so sometimes for me, I spend a lot of my job trying to like play back what I think I've heard or trying to break things down so that maybe others on my team really get the gist of it. And so that act of writing, right? Like you're just kind of parsing and like, okay, at the end of the day, what was just said maybe in 10 minutes was actually these 3 bullet points. And is this right? Is this exactly what I heard? Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So
I've met people like that take 10 minutes to get 3 bullet points across. I'm not saying I'm one of them at all, possibly, maybe. Not saying I've been told that many times, but maybe. But I know exactly what you mean. So you're currently VP of Product Design at UserTesting. I would love to go way, way back, right to the beginning of your career. And if you could give us a bullet point history, the first job you had, and then where that bullet point took you to your very first CD role or equivalent thereof, and then from that role to where you are today.
Yeah. I will try and do it quickly. As probably a lot of folks that you've talked to, it's not a linear path per se, not a traditional path. So I grew up, my family is blue collar. My dad was a carpet installer, and he always told me, you can do anything that you want when you grow up, but you're never going to go hungry and blame me. So you're going to learn the trade. And so he taught me how to be a carpet layer. I was a master craftsman carpet layer by the time I was 19. And that was great. But I also realized like, I probably don't have the physical makeup to be a carpet installer. I'm 6'5", I'm lanky. I see all like these other, my dad included, all hunched over with bad knees. And I was incredibly excited around technology and was a creative as well. Like I grew up with music, drums, and electronic synthesizers and piano. And so I was a carpet layer by day, an electronic musician by night. And about that same time, this thing called the internet came, and it was just so cool. Like, oh my gosh, we can do so much with this. And so we actually started doing online collaboration over 14.4 modems and figuring out how this internet worked with web pages. Somewhere along the line, we decided, hey, a web page would be a great way to promote the band. So of course, I got nominated and got a pirated version of Photoshop and started building websites and looking at source code and figure out how this worked, and really enjoyed it. And over time, I would start to trade websites or CD covers or posters or whatever for studio time, or trade it with other bands to come partner with us. And I had started building up this portfolio of all these design projects. So that was awesome. I was like, okay, great. I'll be a carpet layer by day, musician by night, and also have this hobby of design on the side. And at a certain point, I was like, this is crazy. Like this day job is not for me. And I had a friend who was a headhunter for Microsoft. And he's like, dude, like Microsoft's hiring anybody who knows anything about the internet right now. Like, let me see if I can get you in. And even just a contract role. And so I was game, and I went out to Redmond there and just happened to meet some really cool people who probably saw through my bullshit and my hand waving, but saw somebody who was really interested to learn, very excited. And so they brought me onto the team, and spent probably the first couple of years waiting to get fired every day when they figured out I was a fraud. Uh, a lot of high anxiety. But after a little bit, I realized I was going to be there short term, right? Like, surely this kid with all these piercings and black fingernails and purple hair at the time was like, it didn't belong at Microsoft. So I used that time just to learn whatever I could. Like, if I'm only going to be here for a little bit. And the awesome thing about Microsoft is, one, you are never the smartest person in the room. I mean, you're just surrounded by incredibly smart people and other people who are really interested in sharing what they know. So, I'd sit next to this technology guy and be like, how he'd be like, I want to create a database and pull information. Oh, well, let me show you how to do it. I worked in the Microsoft library. And this was before there was the term information architecture. So you had these librarians that were trained in knowledge management, and they'd be like, here's a multivariate vocabulary glossary tool, and here's how it works. And so I was just like sucking it up. And so it was amazing. And in a company like that, they really reward folks that are self-driven, interested to learn, have a lot of curiosity. I realize that now, what a privilege that was at the time. That was all I knew. So it was amazing. I guess I would be a digital native in that sense. So I kind of was able to kind of grow alongside the growth of the internet and how it applied to all these new products that Microsoft was developing. At the same time, there was this new discipline called UX, user experience. And for Microsoft, the big goal, this was in the late 90s, was just to get a seat at the table. Design was always an afterthought, right? Like, it was just, they developed the product. Now you hand it over to design to make it look pretty, make it functional, make it work well. I was part of the generation of designers that were trying to make a case for, no, like, engage us earlier. You will have bigger impact if you include us. And that was a fight, back then. It was still really rare. You'd be celebrating if you were invited to a stakeholder review of a particular feature. So between the internet and this growth of this UX discipline and the maturity of it, I got to kind of just grow up alongside it. I lost some of the piercings and the purple hair, and I was blessed to have really, really amazing leaders and managers that, in retrospect, and after talking to so many other folks, my wife included, who is a creative as well, and she shares stories of the kind of support she had. By comparison, I just feel so blessed. I mean, everybody that I worked for was like, they literally took me under their wing and provided this foundation for me to learn. At a certain point, one of my great managers was like, look, you got some leadership skills. Like when you talk, people listen. And I think you should consider a leadership role, be a manager. I was like, no fucking way. Like, I am not interested in that whatsoever. Um, and she's like, well, the business needs it. I think you're the person. I'd really encourage you to do it. And so I'm like, okay, I'll give it a try. And, I kind of stumbled my way into it. After the first 6 months, I hated it. I was like, this, that, this sucks. I'm not getting the fulfillment that I want out of this. And so I actually went and talked to our vice president at the time. And he was really great. He heard me out and he was like, look, Jason, what you need to understand is that that first line manager role is the hardest in the company. He's like, you're expected to still do, IC work, but you're also supposed to be managing people. You're also, you're being held to a higher account. He's like, I hear what you're saying. It's incredibly tough, but just do it another 6 months. If you still feel this way, then no problem. We'll figure something out. So I'm like, okay, thanks. I'll give you that. And I am so glad he did, because what I did not realize at the time, so I was self-worth, the value that I was providing as I drive home over the bridge back to Seattle every day, was these deliverables that I was creating. I did these wireframes, or I created these kind of solution, or I influenced these PMs to develop this. And when I moved more into a people management role, I was driving home at the end of the day, like, what the hell did I do? Like, what value did I actually bring? And it just wasn't very fulfilling. And fast forward a couple months, there was a young designer on my team who was really suffering from kind of imposter syndrome. And he had previously been a contractor. We actually called it contractor syndrome too, where you're kind of just a yes person. I was walking down the hall coming back from lunch, and I'd been coaching him, trying to like get him to like feel a little bit confident, push back on PMs, like really. And I was walking back from the cafeteria and I overheard this really intense conversation. And so I kind of snuck up next to the door and I peek around the corner, and here was this designer and this PM up at a whiteboard, just duking it out, just arguing around like approach for this certain problem that they were trying to do. And I'm telling you, like my heart just filled up. I was like, I was so proud of him. But then all of a sudden it dawned on me. I'm like, oh, that's the point of leadership. That's what people management can unlock. And that was a pivotal point that changed everything. And I realized that with people, the investment that you make, sometimes the payoff isn't for months and months later. And as I reflect back to our VP, Rajesh, what now I realize why he wanted me to just see it through long enough so I could start seeing some of the returns on that. So that was my path into formal management, and still stumbled and there was obviously times along the way. But again, I had these amazing mentors and managers that as new situations would come up that I didn't feel comfortable doing, they would walk me through it. They would help me. And at a certain point, what I realized was I started to build a little bit of a brand for, I don't want to call them dysfunctional teams, but teams that needed a lot of recalibration, resorting out. And I'd kind of done that, every, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I would move to another team that had this specific need, whether it was rebuilding relationships with engineers, whether it was, establishing psychological safety so we can be more candid, whatever it was. And eventually, I got tapped to come over to the Xbox team and kind of rebuild that design team, that organization. And it was that kind of at that point that's where I kind of stepped into like, oh, this is what I do. Here's what I am. And I, having been at Microsoft for, I think it was 17 years at that point, I was like, okay, this is really cool. Like I've got some cool brands behind my belt, worked with some amazing teams, shipped some cool products. But I started to question whether my success was dependent on, I figured out how to do it at Microsoft. Like I knew how that machine worked. And so I had this kind of niggling voice in the back of my head, like, yeah, But if you get out in the real world, Jason, like you're gonna, it's a completely different thing. And so I think I kind of had to prove it to myself. And having stayed at Microsoft way longer than I had ever imagined, I left and went to DirecTV down in Los Angeles. And that was my opportunity to prove, does my approach to building teams and products, does that work outside of Microsoft? And turns out it did. And we took a little small scrappy 5-person team and built an amazing world-class organization. And that was kind of like that's when I started like, okay, you can call yourself a leader now. Like, 20 years later, it took that long, but that's my crazy, so much for the bullet points. I apologize, Adam, but like that's
No, this is
kind of the path. And I kind of just do that. I typically I've gone to a few other companies now, and that's what I've been doing. It's also what I love. I've been able to find and build a career around this amazing discipline, but also match it with working for amazing companies that do some really amazing things. But again, with people in environments that have allowed me to continue to grow and get scared and get new challenges. So I'm incredibly, incredibly fortunate, but it wasn't the traditional path.
I love that though, and the more that I'm speaking to people, both in recording these episodes, but also just in conversations in general, I feel like there is a running theme for most of us that have been in the industry for a while is our paths were not particularly as you would expect, and I think there's something to that, to have a wide base of experiences to pull in from and then niche down as you go through your career, as you progress. I'm curious if there was something from the carpet laying, purple haired band days that has stuck with you, whether it's an approach to dealing with people, whether it's a work ethic, or has something sort of formative come out of those experiences?
Yeah, 100%. So my father was an extra generation older. He was 46, I think, when I was born, which back in that day, that was really uncommon. But with that, he kind of had an extra generation's worth of like perspective or approach to work. And I was fortunate I was able to tell him about this before he passed. And I told him, I remember actually writing him a letter. I think I had finally gotten promoted to director level or something at Microsoft. And I said, look, Dad, it appears I'm doing pretty good. And as I reflect, I just want to let you know, like a lot of what has made me successful is what you taught me. And those things were, when we'd come into somebody's house to install carpet in them, he always said, treat this house like it's your own, right? Like show respect for people and for this thing. If you're going to do something, do it well, do it right the first time. He was always so proud that like, I think in a I don't know, 40-year career, he'd only been called back to fix something a few times. And don't be afraid if you don't know something. I remember him chewing me out. I had gone ahead and done something that I'd never done before, and I screwed something up. And he was just like, never be afraid to say you don't know. Ask for help. And so as I think about treating people with respect, caring about craft, and thinking about doing something well and doing the hard work, not being afraid to sweat, pull the all-nighter, do what it takes. I mean, these were all the fundamentals that I just naturally applied when I got to Microsoft, which then was recognized as good traits for somebody who could bring value to a company. So those were big. And I'm so glad to any of our listeners, and if your parents are still around, I really encourage you to take a moment and let them know how much you appreciate that, because once they're gone, you're going to have these recollections and you're going to wish that you had told them. And that was something that I was so glad I did. I think on the other side too, with the electronic music, being a creative in general, there's things that you pull from the creative side too. So with music, the thinking about experiences more from a journey perspective, it comes through a lot, particularly if you work on entertainment products, around the importance of tension and release and building up momentum. And, even the language was really helpful in describing a certain kind of experience to your team or to others around. Like, I find that I pull a lot from music to inform the language and how you describe experiences, because it's analogous, right? It pulls it out of like this direct, and people still understand what you mean I used to be known for doing a lot of sound effects when I was talking to the thing. Well, you see, this thing's it's gonna come down here and it's gonna open up like this and it's gonna unfold like, so that's probably what I took from the music, background.
Love that. On the point of the sound effects, I know exactly what you mean, and I've always done exactly the same thing. And sometimes it's just the easiest, quickest way. And I find that most people will get exactly what you mean with a whoosh or a whatever. They know straight away what that means.
Totally.
It's like a universal language. But I also love that idea that you've come into Microsoft with the ability to put your hand up and say, "Can someone help me with this?" Because that's one of the biggest learnings I had at my time at Microsoft was if I make a mistake, put my hand up and people will come and help me, as opposed to trying to figure it out or scrabble around and fix it in the background. You tend then to sort of compound the mistake, right?
Yeah.
If you're trying to hide it away and fix it on your own. Whereas if you stand there and say, crap, sorry, I've broken this. Can someone help me here? I'm not quite sure why I've broken it or how to fix it. And the culture there was always such that anyone who was relevant in whatever area it was would come along and go, oh yeah, sure. Like, let's sit down for 20 minutes and that it's fixed and you've learned something and you've started to build a new connection.
Do
So
you,
it's interesting that, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna ask, I mean, do you think that is unique to Microsoft, or have you found that also true in most of the other companies that you've worked?
That's a really good question. And I think that's something that I learned from Microsoft and then took to other companies from there on after. So it would be unfair of me to say, I wouldn't know whether it was there or not before I got there because I took it with me. Certainly not saying that I then put that in place in all the other cultures of other places I worked at,
Sure.
but I don't feel like that was there in the places I worked at before. And so I think there's something about the culture there of Microsoft. And no place is perfect. Every place has things that they can improve upon and work to improve. And every organization, especially as large as Microsoft, is to a degree a sort of organic organization where the culture will change with different hires. But I think that's especially the team that I was running that was pan EMEA and then eventually global. It sort of transcended geographical culture and politics as well. It was just a sort of an unwritten rule that we're all here to help each other and get on with work. The other place that I found that had a similar vibe was Fantasy Experience Agency,
Uh-huh.
and that was if you were stuck with something, you could just hop onto Slack and ask anyone, "Hey, have you got a quick 20?" And I just want to jump in. I just want to talk something through. And that was incredibly helpful because everyone there is at the top of their game, which when you join could be quite intimidating. But
For
actually, when
sure.
you start to learn that everybody's open to sharing their expertise, and you can do the same, then it becomes a really free flowing sort of stream of support and help cross discipline, which was great. And I really encourage that. So I love that you went into Microsoft with that attitude and that was seen for the worth that it was and nurtured and helped.
Yeah, I mean, it was self-preservation, at first. I'm like, hey, if I'm gonna get fired, I'm at least gonna take as much as I can with me. So, yeah.
I love that. But I mean, I think that's a great lesson as well, right? Like for those sort of that are listening that are kind of entering this career or this industry, what can you learn wherever you are? What skills can you pick up on? Who can you talk with that's in an adjacent discipline that can that can help you understand the bigger picture of the work that you're trying to do? I think all of those kind of conversations and connections are super important and kind of brings me to my next question. When you think about your journey, all of those different roles at Microsoft and the roles afterwards, even even with the black fingernail carpet laying, like when you think of all of those, is there one place that you would go back to where you were and who you were then, but knowing what you know now? And what would you say to yourself?
That is a that's a really good question. It's funny because I reflect often, but I'm so focused on what's next that never actually be like, oh, if I could go back now, what would that do? So, um, I mean, the imposter syndrome thing is real. because I didn't have the traditional background, I think I let that bother me more than it could. That was energy I could have been that could have been spent on other things. I appreciate it now because I can certainly empathize. I actually really love hiring folks that come from a very diverse background and maybe non-traditional. And it's probably because of my background that I'm like, I realize you can find some real jewels out there. I think that would be the big one. Um, that resistance to moving into a management role.
Hi. If what you're hearing is resonating with you where you are in your leadership journey right now, stay tuned until the end. I'll share details on how you can work directly with me to level up your creative leadership.
Fortunately, I had leaders around me to give me the great advice and to push me so I didn't, I wouldn't have to go back and do that. Yeah, it's so funny. When you look on back, everything's like very rosy. I'm sure there were some times where I was completely disillusioned. I remember at one point, because of the fear of hitting a glass ceiling, because I didn't have the credentials that I thought, I was actually going to leave Microsoft, take a leave of absence, I don't know, go to Pratt or Art Center or something and get the degree that would make me feel good about. And I spent a long time kind of pursuing that idea of doing it. But the good news was I went and I interviewed the programs, and what they were teaching was what I was doing at work. So I'm like, wait a minute, like I'm going to leave the company to go and get the credentials. That some of the stuff they were teaching was stuff we did 5 years ago. Like it was already out of date. And at a certain point, I think I just like, okay, I'm just going to roll the dice and see what happens. And I think I probably would have told myself earlier, just don't worry about it. Just learn, learn, learn. You're in the center of where the new processes, where the new thinking is getting established. Don't worry about academia so much. Not that there's anything wrong with academia, for sure. But for me, I would tell myself, don't worry about it so much.
I resonate with that so much because I wish you could go back in time to me earlier and tell me that I don't need to worry about not having any kind of formal training or anything like that, that it's all going to work out fine. Because for me, I was always a young leader, right? A lot of my team were older than me. So I was worried about that, but I was also worried about I don't have a formal route into design. It's so totally self-taught. So I had that kind of double imposter syndrome to battle against. And you're absolutely right. Like you then start to look into some point, you start to look into, okay, I need to get a grip on this and get a piece of paper that says I can do what I already know I can do so that I have a piece of paper that says I can do it. And when you start to look into it, then you go, well, I wouldn't do it that way. Like the way they're saying to do this, like that's great on paper, but it doesn't work in the real world or whatever it might be. And again, not doing those courses, they're incredibly important and they can really build a career, but so can just getting on with the job, just getting into places and getting knee deep in it all and working your way through it.
Well, one of the things, so most of my designers and researchers and folks, they all deal with this at a certain level, regardless whether they've got an academic background or not. And one of the things that I've started encouraging them to do based on my experience is, so I was at Microsoft, I don't know, maybe 5 years, and our head of the department left to go run the information school at University of Washington. So he goes off, and about 6 months later, he reaches out to me. He's like, Jason, I want you to come and talk to my graduate program around the design process. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, no goddamn way. And he said, this is not this is not a request. I'm telling you to. And because Mike, I respect him so much, I'm like, okay. So I stressed out about it and I built, this deck and a story, and I show up at the University of Washington in this big hall, and there's like all these adults um, in the stands, and I started just walking them through. I'm shaking. I'm just like really, really nervous. And I get through my presentation, and then it was Q&A, and some of the students start putting up their hands and they're asking these questions, and I knew the answer. And then the next question came, and I knew that answer. And I kept going. And all of a sudden, I realized I knew way more than I gave myself credit for. And it wasn't until I had to talk about it to others that, I mean, that was like just the pivot from a confidence perspective. Like, oh, I thought everybody knew this. Like, what? Like, this is just basic 101 stuff. And they were like really engaged and really like wanted to like learn from my experience. And which is why now I really press on my team to get out into the community or to get out of there and every one of them, I mean, it's without a doubt, they're so nervous. Sometimes they'll even push back on me, but they'll come back and I'll be like, oh, I did that podcast and oh my gosh, like it went so well. And you just see like them start to blossom. So if I was to go back, that's what I would tell you. Like, go talk about it because you undervalue the things that you know, the experience that you have until you kind of get that validation externally. They're like, no, Adam, wow, that's really insightful. You're like, it is? Wow.
Yeah. That resonates so strongly, and I think it's such a great way of helping others beat that. You know, I think we look at imposter syndrome as something that we have to get rid of, and I don't think we do. I think it's something that can really help us learn and grow. We lean into imposter syndrome, we'll find out a hell of a lot about ourselves by listening to what our self-talk is, and then figure out what is absolute bullshit. And like, you know, undeniably, unequivocally bullshit, but also, okay, there's a little kernel of something here, but that's not scary. That's just something for me to look into, right? That's something for me to lean into and develop an area here.
If you recognize if you recognize it and lean into, because I have seen though the other side of it where it has allowed it to negatively impact the voice or the confidence that somebody can deliver a point of view or a perspective. And that's where it becomes problematic. Like if you don't speak up, if you don't share your perspective, then that's really I mean, that's taking away part of why I hired you was because I want that unique voice. And so it's super valuable, but it's something that you have to get over. And whether that's being proactive about it or just coming to terms with it and realizing that you're not alone. It's all of us, you know. You throw me into a board meeting, I'm going to get it all over again. Like, you know, it never stops. So get comfortable with it and just understand it's part of your professional growth for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love the idea of acceptance of it, you know, living with it. And you're absolutely right. Like, you know, both of us are decades into this. And as you say, and I often say as well, like there's still those nerves there when you're standing up in front of a room or you're just about to give a pitch or you're just about to give you know, conduct a stakeholder interview or whatever it might be. You have to find that balance. There's always something riding on the thing you're about to do, but you also have to remember it's not the end of the world if you fumble a word or if the slide goes wrong or if you don't remember to include something or whatever it might be. There's always a chance to revisit something in some way, shape, or form.
Totally. Well, and also the interesting thing too is that you start it becomes a habit in the sense it's a great tool to understand, like, if you haven't felt imposter syndrome in a while, are you pushing yourself hard enough? Like, are you like, I've reached the top of the mountain and I'm just feeling great about this. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, okay, Jason, like, really? Are you just like resting? Like, you almost like, well, what am I going to do next? How am I going to get that feeling again of unsure of myself? And so it also becomes this tool that back to your point, that it's important that you can use in your favor to ensure that you're not getting complacent.
That's really good. And it reminds me for so long, like after I left Microsoft, I set up my first design agency and I was very fortunate to have some very big clients straight away. And I remember saying to myself, I don't want to get complacent and I don't want to get arrogant. So when a piece of work is done, great, it's done. What's the next piece of work? And so on and so on and so on. And so a few years in, I realized I was never, I was choosing to never go back and look at stuff that I'd done and celebrate any success. And it wasn't until many, many years later that my partner was saying to me, she showed me how important it is to take stock and celebrate, because otherwise the imposter syndrome will rise to unhealthy levels, like you're saying, where it stops you having a voice, it stops you having an opinion. And what she helped me see was that celebrating the things that you've done, the achievements you've achieved, the awards you might have won, or what have you, within the context of what that is, in a relevant way. It's not going to make you big-headed or overblown or what have you, but it does really help you go, no, actually, yeah, I am good at this. I do know what I'm doing. And here is external validation to show that. And that's okay. It's okay to celebrate that and look back at those successes. So I think that to your point, that's a really, really important set of external data you can use to keep that imposter syndrome where it needs to be in the right balance.
Thank God for having trusted companions or partners around us that can remind us it's okay to be a little proud of the work that you've done.
Exactly. Which brings me really nicely to my next question. I would love to know, when you think back of all the things that you've done, what's one piece of work that you're most proud of?
Piece of work. The thing that I am honestly most proud of are the new young design leaders that are out there today that are kicking ass and taking names. And I had a small piece in being able to support that. So technically, I don't know if you'd call that work. To me, that's where I put a ton of my energy. And I see, to see these posts and to see where they are now, I'm just incredibly proud. It's the work that I think that when I reflect back on, that's what matters most. And some of them have such great stories of having struggled so hard or coming from a really challenging background. That's certainly probably the thing that I reflect on and I appreciate most. I will say the job I have right now is incredibly rewarding. The product itself isn't to the place where I'm ready to put my name on it. So I've still got work to do, but I have never worked for a company before that has such a similar mission. I work for UserTesting, and their mission, I mean, there's a reason they don't put me in messaging and branding, but effectively it's to end shitty experiences, right? Rid the world of crap, which just happens to align so much with my own professional goals. And so that is incredibly rewarding. The opportunity to impact at new levels. I spend a lot of my time with customers and really getting a true sense of where we are as an industry of design and user experience. I sometimes in my little bubble, I think like, hey, 20 years later, like, look at how far we've come. And then all it takes is to talk with a few companies and a few design teams. I'm like, oh shit, like these are conversations I remember back 15 years ago that we were having. And so to directly impact customers like that and to work for a company that is very aligned with my own. And so and building the team that, again, this next round of leaders that I'm seeing step up and grow, I get super excited and proud. And I think I'm just really excited about what I'm doing right now.
I want to flip this, and I promise I'll flip it back again the other way afterwards, but I want to flip it now to, if you think about an aha moment that came out of something that didn't go as planned. I don't want to necessarily say a mistake, but something that wasn't quite how it should be. What was it, and what did you learn from that?
Man, I mean, I make so many mistakes all the time. it's 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 hard. It's hard. Um, well, actually, one of the things that I left the United States where I'd worked for a long time and just came to the UK. I've been here for 2.5 years. And part of that was to get the experience of working in a different dynamic and understand a different work culture. But I still kind of came in, I was at Microsoft, Silicon Valley, those kind of that mentality. And it wasn't until I came here that I realized that I was leading with this very US centric perspective. I was kicking myself for not reading, was it Aaron Meyer's book? Was it the culture map? Sorry, that talks about some of these different dynamics. And it wasn't until I So, we merged companies. We had to do some resizing and some layoffs. I was walking out of the office and there was a fellow at his desk and he had his head down on the desk. And um, it's like, oh, I'm really sorry. Are you okay? Were you impacted? He's like, no, but my entire team was wiped out. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And he looks at me and he says, it's just so unfair. And my knee-jerk reaction was, what the hell are you talking about? That it's so unfair. This is business. This happens every day. Me coming from at-will employment and this kind of whole way of the relationship between employees and employers. And fortunately, I was very sensitive, but my reaction was like, good grief, like capitalism and in retrospect, and it's taken some time, I'm a little ashamed of that model that I've held on and have then imposed onto the teams, not knowingly. And that's something that it's given me a ton of humility to realize, oh, okay, Mr. Smarty Pants from high tech Microsoft and all these things, like you need to have a stronger appreciation because there's some amazing reasons why people have these relationships with employers in other countries and that dynamic and how it changes their psyche, their expectations around what work means to them. And then just as a designer, it becomes like this cool new problem. Oh, okay. Like you flip it around and like, oh, well, for Scandinavians, like let's dig into that. What does being totally engaged at work mean in Scandinavia versus so anyways, long answer, but I would say that in the last 5 years, that's the big profound thing that happened to me was the hubris that I recognized in myself coming from America to Europe and undervaluing the goodness also that comes from the employee pool and the relationship that people have to their work and their broader life.
Wow, that's a very candid answer. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I promised you I would flip it back again to not sort of stay on the downer. So when you think about everything outside of work, what are you most proud of?
Um, Um, I am very fortunate. I have a partner, a wife who has an adventurous spirit like myself. And so she has been just this awesome partner to pick up and move to different companies, to different states, to different countries. We're quite excited. We're now planning a move to Spain and just to have that person to be my buddy and just go rock it and go experience new things. I'm fortunate. I don't want to say I'm proud. I'm proud of her, of course, but I'm so fortunate to have met somebody who's got that same kind of natural curiosity, natural adventurous spirit, because it's afforded me to be able to like really have tremendous experiences and what, I'm 52 now, so I'm halfway there. I still got like phase two, to go and to have somebody that is supportive like that and challenges me. Oh my God. Yeah. We're kind of fire and ice. She's a short redhead and I'm this big, huge, tall, gray-haired guy. And she's the fire, I'm the ice, and she's got nonstop ideas of what to do next. So that's what I'm most excited about and thankful for.
It sounds like you found a true partner, which is great.
Totally. Totally. She's the best.
I have one final question for you. It's the same final question that I ask every single guest. Jason Giles, are you still awaiting approval?
What's funny is I saw this in the invite. I didn't even know this is the name of your podcast. I thought you were waiting for me to like accept the invite. So am I awaiting approval? Um, I think, to be honest, I always will be. I want validation from others. I want validation from myself. I want to make my dad proud. I want to make my CEO proud. So I think I am awaiting approval in the sense of I'm not whole unto myself, unto an island in this state of bliss and full satisfaction. Um, yeah, I think sure. Still want to like make an impact and have others proud of me too.
Before we wrap up, much like Hot Ones, It's your opportunity to tell people this camera, or well, just basically the one camera. Like, where can people get in touch with you? What would you like to promote?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, of course. That's where you can get a hold of me. I need to thank you, Adam, for turning me onto Substack. I haven't started publishing there, but I think that's a really great uh, platform where I'm seeing a lot of great conversation. So I'd love to see you there. Yeah, take away, be kind to yourself, don't undervalue your experience and the opportunity that you can have to impact the world, these products that we're putting out there, and those around you. And yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out. I love to connect with other people.
Jason, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Likewise, Adam, thanks for the invite. This has been great.
Thanks for listening to Awaiting Approval. If you're a creative leader or stepping into a leadership position and want support that's honest, practical, and tailored to you, I'd love for you to come and join my Supercharged Creative Leaders program. It's a 4-week course built around 8 pre-recorded modules, 4 live sessions with me and the rest of your cohort, a private Slack space for you to ask questions and go deeper together, plus ongoing access to my alumni community once you complete the course. Each cohort is capped at just 6 people, so you'll always get personal attention, real feedback, and space to grow. And if you want to tailor the journey further, you can book extra one-to-one sessions with me, and we can dig deeper into the challenges you're facing right now. I built this program based on everything I wish I'd known when I started leading creative teams. No fluff, no jargon, just the tools, frameworks, conversation, and clarity that will actually move you forward. Spots go quickly, so if this sounds like the right fit for you, go to growwithadamjennings.com to book your place on the next cohort. Previous attendees have gone on to win major pitches, land new roles, get promoted, and step into leadership with more clarity, confidence, and purpose. You can find out more and book your place on the next cohort at growwithadamjennings.com. I can't wait to start working with you. Awaiting Approval is a Cordial Fox production, hosted by Adam Jennings, produced by Adam Jennings and Jasmine Egner.